Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Book 'em Nook Show. My name is Kyle Colley and this is a special episode of Author Talks Podcast, a podcast to hear about the behind the scenes stories, ideas, and writing journeys of authors. This episode is brought to you by Book 'em, the book community's new and best way to host dynamic online book clubs. Download the app and start your book club today at www.bookemapp.com. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. My guest today is the world-renowned John Robinson. JR is the most recorded drummer in history of modern music and a Grammy Award-winning musician. He has been on 30 number one hit all-time records, over 10,000 recording sessions for albums, movies, TV shows. He has worked with Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, Rufus and Shaka Khan, John Williams, Lady Gaga, Peter Frampton, Stevie Wonder, Daft Punk, Madonna, Stevie Nicks, Herbie Hancock, should I continue? Whitney Houston, Steve Winwood, Diana Ross, and the list goes on. He is the author of the amazing book, King of the Groove. John, welcome to the Author Talk Podcast.
Thank you, Kyle. It's my honor to be here with Bookham and you and everybody, and even my Denver Broncos fans.
There you go. Sounds good. I want to start in Iowa. You mentioned you never know what kind of funky things can come from a cornfield. So how did your Midwestern roots shape your music taste?
I grew up in a different generation, of course, being born in the 50s, but my town of Creston, Iowa, which I was born in Southwest Iowa, was incredibly musical, believe it or not, in a really small town. And, sometimes you'd think, well, geez, that's just country western, but no, man, it was smoking and all sorts of jazz, big band, rock bands, and I had really solid foundation with my parents, so it kind of grounded me by the natural things that were to happen when I was a little boy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, so your mom was in education, correct? So she did. She
No,
was a writer.
she was actually a beautiful, tall, 5'10" Durham, North Carolinian hot housewife, but she became a writer, and her father, Fred Haney, was a famous sports writer and a voice of the Durham Bulls, and used to write for many newspapers in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and Atlanta. So that's how I learned that. But my mother taught me the word swing.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, no, because I was reading the book and you talked about how well she was a writer, and I mean how well she writes, and I could tell from just the way you told stories and the way it came out on the page, like I could tell that was natural for you in a lot of sense.
Well, her name was Helen, and she could type 125 words a minute, and she had perfect cursive.
Oh, wow.
And it's like and being she was Southern and my dad was Northern, but my mother had this beautiful grasp of the English language, and then later in her life started writing these stories and stuff, which I still have. But if I did learn anything, it was I don't know. I mean, the writing came later. You can ask that.
Sounds good. So talk to us the first time you held the drumsticks in your hand, those early gigs. I know you talked about your band, The Three, like around Creston, Iowa. Just talk about that time and your early music in those moments.
Well, I mean, even before that, like I talk about in the book, my dad got me into piano at age 5. Yep. I was way too young, dude. I was like, if you don't know some math, when you start on piano, if you're really just starting out, it's very difficult. So I struggled for between 5 and 7 on piano. Even though I did well, I still struggled. And then all of a sudden I got hit by a drum bolt and started playing drums naturally by the grace of God. And I held this, I don't have sticks in here, but I held them wrong, like a claw hold. But the first thing I did was play a swing groove correctly.
Oh, wow.
And then that led into looking for I need to reach out and play with another human being. Yeah. So my parents got together with these other parents, the Clemens, and I met a 9-year-old guitar player when I had just turned 10, and we started forming a duo and learning about what do you do with it when you're a kid, but you found another friend or soon to be that kind of likes the same kind of music of those days, and so we collaborated and figured out what we both liked, and then started learning them.
Yeah. How do you define groove? Because as a king of the groove, how do you define groove, and how did you develop it in your throughout your career?
You know, it's funny. I've been to Japan over 30 times, and when I first went there years ago, they would go, what is groove? What is groove? And I go, "No, well, groove. You know, groove is from within. You manifest it from within, but you feel it before you can manifest it from within. So I mean, groove could be, the way a dancer gets on stage and just outputs this majestic just art, or in my case, uh, you know. I've been very blessed with really, really good time
Yeah.
as a drummer. And to me, that's what a drummer is. You're
Yeah.
supposed to have good time, and you're not supposed to overplay. So I guess groove is when I can make, people smile. When I get on stage, there'll be people then dancing.
Yeah. And speaking of time, in your book, you talk about how Miles Davis said that there's like the space between the notes is just as important as the notes themselves. How do you, as a drummer, kind of use that space, that silence to enhance the groove?
Well, when with the old band Rufus, we were all just so akin with each other about where time goes and where space goes and where melody is, and where you compliment another player. So if I get with a new group and all of a sudden I hear, let's just pick on the bass player for a second, and if he's just playing way too much stuff, and I'm like, God, am I, sometimes am I to like slap him, or am I just, maybe sometimes I stop. And that was the beauty about Tony Williams
Yeah.
when he was like, 17 and got with that quintet. He would just stop playing all of a sudden, just out of the blue, and I'm like, that always puzzled me.
Yeah.
But I learned from that, and I learned from Ed Soph, and the thing about it is let's say you get through the verse, and then you go through a B section, and there's a point between you get from the B section to the chorus, and you go, do I fill the fill? Do I lead the band into the chorus? Well, sometimes you do, but let's say you're coming out of the chorus and it goes back into a re-intro, and all of a sudden it goes do 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 bop, boom. So
Yeah.
there's 4.5 beats of silence there that are worth their weight in gold. And if you can just understand that nobody really gives a shit about you as a drummer. What they
No.
want to know is they want to know about the song. And so how do you complement that? And space is one of your biggest allies.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then I also think that could you talk a bit about this concept of the pocket? And it's funny because when I talk to like my friends that make music and all that, I'm like, oh, they're in the pocket. They're not in the pocket. And I always said it. So when I heard you talk about this idea of the pocket, it really helped me understand music a lot better. So like as a drummer, how do you understand that and conceptualize again, kind of in this idea of the pocket?
All right, so let's say I'm sitting in with a new rhythm section,
Yeah.
and I get in there, and maybe I have doubts out of the gates for the first 2.5 bars, or they do, or they don't know what they're doing, and everybody's kind of fishing and figuring it. But pretty soon, a pocket, when everybody becomes one,
Yeah.
develops, and then everybody starts to listen. So the way to deal with the pocket is to use your ears first, and then you add your style within that groove or rhythm section.
Gotcha, gotcha. So like speaking of music, can you tell us the iconic story of the intro and that fill to Rock with You with Michael Jackson? Just like you go through the process, like your creative process, and how that whole moment.
Yeah, I detail it quite heavily in the book King of the
Yeah,
Groove, but these are times when I was very fortunate during the whole Off the Wall period to play on every song on that record. And Quincy cast me with other rhythm sections during that record, but I was the mainstay. So when we got to Rock With You recording a week, he cast my band Rufus, which is Bobby Watson on bass, Hawk Walensky, and David Williams. And like we were playing, and we were in a Westlake B, and there was no magic. And we had learned a song from Rod Temperton, and but Michael wasn't singing live, so we didn't have any of that spurt. But we all knew it, and we so take one, and hey, let's do another take. Okay, take two is things are getting a little bit better, but there's no magic, and not even coming from me. And I got my part fairly defined at that point. And take three, and all of a sudden I see Quincy and Rod get up and come out and come and stand right by me, and I'm like, well, they're obviously picking on me because I'm the catalyst that has to spurn these, to kick these other guys' asses. And Quincy just looks at me and he goes, JR, can you come up with a fill that the whole world will forever identify with? And I'm just like looking at him like, sure. And I can see the rest of the guys going like this, like really, and Rod's puffing on his Marlboros, and it's kind of like it was kind of like that scene in Trading Places with Eddie Murphy goes to jail, and that one brother's going, yeah. And I was like, Rod Temperton's that guy. And I'm like, okay, Quincy, okay. So they go back into the studio, and I didn't have one iota what I was going to do.
Man.
So I just entrusted in myself. I mean, I wasn't praying to the Lord, because if he hadn't given it to me already by now, it would have been way too late. So I'm just like, I prayed within my, I didn't pray. I set a thing to myself as like, all right, you get these 8 clicks, and the next one was when the fill came, and it came, and then everybody started playing really well, and almost like Bobby Watson's bass part. If you guys want to go check it out, listen to what he plays on that song. It's some of the most melodic bass playing with groove I've ever heard in my life. So wow. I don't know how it happened, but Quincy's words were, not intimidating, but rewarding.
Yeah. So how old were you at that time?
I was just 25.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how do you, so when you're in those situations, because I'm sure that was one song, but in general, I'm sure people are like, all right, we trust you, John. Figure this out. Like, you hear the music, you're already who you are. How do you kind of get ready for those moments? Because I guess, like you said, if you're not ready by then, so how did you kind of prepare yourself? Were you practicing on your own time and at different times, or how'd you kind of get ready for that?
You can't really rehearse spontaneity.
Yeah.
So one thing I learned about, just being a very young musician and then going through all these educational programs I went through, and I first went to music college when I was a freshman in junior high to Northwest Missouri State, and then it started going to Illinois State and all these other things, and it was, I guess you prepare yourself for the unknown.
Okay.
And I also did more than, when I got to Berkeley and Boston, I had done more than just pop, R&B, and jazz. I did a guy named Toro Koshi. His name was Tiger. He was the kind of like the Miles Davis of Japan in the old days, and just a great musician and trumpet player. And we did a senior recital, and I was young. And on that piece of paper, there were 3 movements. And the first movement, there were no notes. We weren't reading music. We were reading old Japanese symbols from 800 years ago. And so I see this thing with goes, and I go, what do I do? And so I find some piece of metal in real time and like scrape on the side of the drums and maybe, So these are just little things that you prepare yourself for, that you don't know will happen. So I'm just, I trust in my process, and I think that's what the new musicians need to learn.
Okay, I like that, because it reminds me of in that Quincy Jones documentary when he talks about he basically says something around the lines like, you got to be like 80 or 90% ready, and then it's like there's that 10% that's just, it comes from somewhere else. It's God, it's whatever you want to call it, but you got to just put yourself in that moment. And I like that. I like that you said it like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's look at it this way. Rodney Dangerfield, the greatest comedian to me of all time. And I mean, there's these modern, like, you don't want to play him for your children, but Rodney always had a compartmentalized area. he had compartments where if he was telling a joke and you know where the joke was going, but he may pull out a different punchline or a different procedure to get from point A to point B. That's the same with being a musician.
Yep. And then so on that, like, how do you know when you've made a hit song, or like how do you know when the song is it? Kind of like you said, that take where you're like, all right, this
Yeah,
is
yeah. During Don't Stop on that following Monday after I'd come in and overdubbed on two tunes, and I saw Greg Fillinganes there, and I could first of all I was really really inspired by the song because the drum groove is something I had never played before, but it just came naturally to me. It wasn't hard. It was challenging, but I see Greg standing on his piano bench dancing and playing the Mini Moog and the Rhodes, and I'm going, well, he's obviously motivated also. And so after a couple of times rehearsal down, and then we record it. I just looked at him and I go, man, we just cut a number one record. And I was wishing that we cut a number one record, and I was right. Somehow I don't know how I knew. I mean, God knows all those Rufus solo records we did. There weren't a lot of number one records on there. There was a couple, but there were R&B and
Yep.
and and not until Ain't Nobody came around. But you know, Rock With You, I knew immediately was a number one record. Diana, Missing You, and Higher Love, and Change the World. I mean, you just kind of know.
Yeah. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about Rod Temperton's like writing style? 'Cause I think of him as one of the best writers of his time. Like you talk this like, were you there or in those situations where it came to like something like a "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" or even like some of those moments?
I wasn't there in the initial writing of that
Okay.
because Rod writes in a private way, or wrote in a private way. I first met Rod in 1978 before I joined Rufus at a Rufus show but I was at the same time when I joined him, and Heatwave was opening up, and I always listened to Always and Forever and Heatwave and Groove Line. I mean Groove Line
Yep.
and all these other songs, and I listened to it, and it seemed so simple until he got in the studio with us and broke every cat's part down.
Wow.
And he would sit in front of like Louis Johnson or Bobby Watson and tell them exactly what to play,
Mm.
and then had them take the liberties around it, but saying, don't veer too much. And it was the opposite of Miles Davis.
See.
And same with Greg's keyboard parts or David Williams' guitar parts. Now with my drum parts, he would let me have the freedom to do things because that's one thing he wasn't very good at.
Mm.
But it was all about the song process and how each part then complements the melody that he wrote.
Gotcha. And yeah, speaking of that freedom, could you talk a little bit about working with John Williams? And he was just like,
Uh,
you
I
talk
worked
a
with
little bit.
I
Yeah,
worked with John a couple of times.
yeah.
One was with Josh Groban on Josh's first
Oh, cool.
DVD live, and John came in, and I'm used to a downbeat conductor like Quincy.
Yep.
He, and Bill Ross, same way, he conducts on the downbeat. Marvin Hamlish was a little skittish, and when I first worked with John, it was like everything was on the upbeat, and I'm going, why are you doing that? And he explains it because of the string players,
Wow.
and because he's trying to pull them along. But if you're a downbeat guy, I need a downbeat. So we're doing it the NFL first round themes. I've done them twice now. The second ones I did here at this studio that you hear on NBC,
Okay.
and all that stuff's me. But the first ones he had written, and we went into the Barbra Streisand soundstage at Sony, and I had my big drum set up, big, like fat, and I mean not double bass drums and shit, but he had like these beautiful percussionists and all these beautiful brass players, and everybody was separate. And I'm sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and like reading their snare drum parts. I go, this is some advanced shit. And then finally he gets up and because his brother Donnie and I are really good friends, and he used to play with us with the Streisand Orchestra.
Right.
And John's father was a famous jazz drummer in the early days in Los Angeles. So he's like, we're playing these NFL, they're kind of advanced, kind of a rock motion odd time themes. And I'm like, all right, I got to play, but I don't have any music. I go up to John. I go, do I have any music? He goes, man, Jerry, I'm sorry, man. I just don't know what to write for this for you. And I'm thinking, your dad was a drummer. Your brother is a percussionist. You are the greatest. You should be on Mount Rushmore. And I'm just thinking of those things. And he just let me do what I wanted to do. So I'm like, and he walked around the drum set and just looked at it. I'm like, okay. I mean, maybe he was maybe expecting like a 4-piece bebop set.
Yeah.
But I go, no, to play this, I'm an NFL guy. To play this shit, you got to have this big sound.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I brought to the table.
And do you like from your perspective, do you like being like, all right, told this is how you want it to be done, or do you like the kind of how John was saying, like, hey, I believe in you, just do how you enjoy?
I mean, I don't remember if I may have asked him a question or two. This was quite a while ago.
Yeah, no.
I may have asked him, some input and stuff, but I got to stay through the whole process, and then I came on at the end.
Mm.
Whereas lots of times, during my recording heyday, I would go on first, and then people, so I would have to guess what the song was. By this point, I knew exactly what I was going to play.
Gotcha. Yeah, I want to shift a little bit into We Are the World, because that documentary just came out on Netflix. And one of the things I really liked about your book is you kind of told the behind the scenes story about it. Can you talk a little bit about like the reference sessions that led up to what everybody sees on the documentary?
Right, and there was a previous documentary that Jane Fonda narrated in '85 that shows a little bit of footage of Greg Lewis and myself,
Oh, cool.
and we were there a week before, and we went to Lion's Share, Kenny Rogers' studio, which was the old ABC Dunhill building, ironically where Rufus was signed when I first joined at the end. But we cut that in advance. I can't remember the documentary guy's name.
Yeah.
Bao, I think his
Oh,
name.
yeah, yeah.
And the original, and I started watching it, and I'm going, I mean, I've lived this, so I didn't really want to watch the whole thing. But I started to like looking at the credits, and we're not there, and we were the foundation. So I did an Instagram kind of editorial without using any swear words, and I was not mean. And I just said, you're forgetting the most important part of this album. I mean, I did a Steve Perry song on that record too, so there was other musicians on that record. But for We Are the World, the song, he didn't give credit. So that kind of went viral after it got out there. And then he went in and re-edited it and added us later. So, and then of course, then we cut that week before. And then they brought in the stars the week after at A&M and A or Henson. And Quincy asked me, "Hey JR, you want to be in the choir?" Because I was a singer and I sang all state in Iowa, and I used to sing in all my rock bands and stuff until I met Shaka and then stopped singing. See, way to go, girl. But I didn't want to get into that circus. I would have been standing next to Aykroyd and Anita Pointer probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And like I said, that everything plays into it. I think about even like with reference checks now and how kind of like I think I want to hear what you have to say, because like, I think AI plays a lot of parts in that too. Just like, are people going to just be using reference tracks and then you have to kind of like re-listen to them, or how do you think that kind of future looks like?
Well, the sad part is we need to keep AI. I mean, the good part of AI is we need to keep it in our tool belt.
Yeah.
Because it's here and it's not going anywhere. But the sad part is with these young kids thinking that they can compose a song using AI, and that's not the way you do it. Even in that Beatles reissue,
Yeah.
why? It's already been there and it's done. I mean, you use AI and technological things. Or useful things without stepping on. But the song process or a drumming process, that's why, I mean, I honestly feel that I don't believe I can be replaced or a live drummer can be replaced through AI. Now, AI could probably analyze a person and come up with something. But again, it's not living, breathing, heart pumping.
Yeah, it's like that the soul plus the science in that sense. Like a lot of
Yeah.
it comes from sitting. It's like okay, we sat here in this war, for lack of a better term, a war room of just working with each other and being creative. When you take all that hard fought part of bringing your each individual souls into it, it changes it a lot, and it feel like there's something missing there.
You know, it'd be cool though, if you really think about it. I mean, you could go on Spotify in the future or somewhere Apple and have a total AI channel.
Oh yeah,
I mean, if they're having, all that stuff that happens from the 90s and the early 2000s and, all these, weird chill channels and, which is just, ugh. But you could have an AI channel. I think it would be brilliant. And you could
yeah,
actually have divisions of AI in different aspects. So, I mean, let's look at it as an asset, not
yeah. I
a
think
threat.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying. Maybe it could be useful on the reference side because then you can hear it and then you go make your own drums to it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it might be easier to get demos prepared that way.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about just the dynamic of the Killer Q Posse and what made those sessions so unique?
Well, I got in when I met him in '78, and then started working with him in late '78, and because he produced Rufus and Shaka Khan,
Mm.
we were the first band he ever produced. So that kind of right there developed a trust factor of wow, I'm working with this unbelievably great producer who still hadn't had the Michael Jackson success yet.
Mm.
And but we knew him from the Brothers Johnson, and we knew him from the Wiz, and we knew him from Sanford and Son, and we knew him from Leslie Gore and President of Mercury in 1957, and just all the things I learned up, and him being of my school of Berklee College of Music, so I felt really close to him and trust. So then when we got into Off the Wall, I could see what was going on with him casting, and the Q Posse was basically, let's come to family dinner on Sunday, and you know what we're eating, and putting trust in every one of us equally. We weren't hired slaves. We were equal in the creativity of all those records.
Oh wow. And can you talk a little bit about kind of just being able, like I guess like for lack of a better term, like the entrepreneurship side of being a drummer because you're able to go from one, like for example, you went from like a Steve Winwood to Peter Frampton. Like how do you kind of continue to do that and then make your own lane as a drummer?
Yeah, I was very blessed to get into that '80s movement, and where everything changed. Record deals were huge. The artists were unbelievable. Bands were great. Solo artists, songwriters, disc jockeys. Just the whole thing was just a beautiful thing. So to be able to play with certain, like a song like created called Just Once, written by Cynthia Weil and Barry Mann,
Okay.
is one of the greatest songs ever written, and it was written the old-fashioned way, and to be able to play on a song that speaks volumes, and then go to another song, and to be a part of that thing, and um, I was very blessed to live through that. So. I mean, the entrepreneurship comes later when your career, like now in my career, which we can hash on now or later, but all the things that I'm doing and how I learned how to be, it's not just being a chameleon, but
Yeah.
it's doing what you believe in and to basically help the masses.
Yep. I agree. And then a little bit just on the touring versus like recording session. What made you want to stay more in the record? I know you did all of it, but like looking back, like what are the pros and cons for each? I guess from it comes to touring versus staying as more of a recording sessions.
Well, again, how the industry is now transformed to you have to tour to make money,
Yeah.
whereas in the old days you would make the record to make money and then tour on the aftermath of that. So I tour now with David Foster. I've been touring with him since '95, and I was with Streisand for that entire time she went out. And then I put Rufus and Chaka Khan back together in 2001, but of course the tragedies ended that. And I had my jazz trio up until the beginning of this year, and now I'm putting together the J.R. Robinson experience for touring. But I love touring live with David or myself because it's I get to play real music,
Yeah.
and everybody likes it. Um, in those days, I was running 3 drum sets a day sometimes doing sessions. So, I turned down, let me just tell you this. I turned down Michael Jackson from the beginning. I turned down Lionel Richie from the beginning in the golden days. I turned down Bob Seger because I didn't want to have to move to effing Detroit, uh, even though Wife One was from Detroit. I turned down Steve Winwood because the money was too low. I really wanted to go out with Steve though. It was very cool. And then Stanley Clarke and George Duke in the beginning, I did a little bit from because I was in that group, but I was too busy. And let's see who else. I ended up doing John Fogerty and becoming musical director. So that was really kind of interesting. But then we couldn't play any Creedence tunes during those days.
See.
So it was kind of like I got paid really well, but I had to take a beer bottle in the face now and then. So. But it's a well-rounded thing, and now I've been composing and now an author, and we're starting a book publishing company called Fourth Quarter Press.
Awesome. Awesome. I love to hear it. Yeah, I just think about like even bands like the Steely Dan or something. They're
Yeah,
very much like they made some of the best albums of all time, but they didn't tour for so long. But
that's right. Nobody knew they were a touring
yeah,
group. They
now you
weren't.
get to see him tour. But like back then, I could only imagine how much bigger they would have been, as being able to do all those tours and see all those cities.
They were pretty hip for the room in those days, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
They were a little too hip for the room, but now that's become the norm. So it's great.
Yeah. What have been some of your favorite cities to tour or like, when you go out?
Houston, Atlanta,
Okay.
Philadelphia. When I first played at the Spectrum, it's before your time, when Dr. J and Daryl Dawkins were
Okay.
playing together, and I was still playing quite a lot of basketball, and we came in the day after to the Spectrum that Daryl Dawkins broke the first backboard in the NBA. And I'm going, now they fixed that shit. But
Yeah,
I
exactly.
went, I was going around and I'm going, where's the glass? I wanted a piece of the glass that Daryl
Oh
Dawkins
yeah.
broke.
That's right.
New Orleans, I have not been there in a while. Um, let's see, Chicago. I
Okay.
love Chicago, and New York. I used to live in New York for a while with Streisand, and I can give or take it. It's like pizza's really good though,
Yeah.
but I would say Chicago.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Have you done Red Rocks too out in Colorado?
I've I've done Red Rocks. Got a story about it. I don't think we'll tell that here. Yeah, Red Rocks, but we did it years ago, so I have not been back.
Very cool. Yeah, I
Oh, I
love it.
might have been there with Glenn Fry after that, but there you go.
That's one of my all-time favorites. I do want to shift a little bit into just like how do you continue to connect with modern music? Like when you think about all these timeless records that you've made and how things have changed, when it comes to modern music, like how have you been able to connect with it and see it and understand like where it's at right now and where it can still go?
Well, it's a very good question because I'm still in search of writing a number one record, so but my whole brain power has gone towards writing words,
Yeah.
and but I'm also involved in 2 new films, being the composer,
Okay.
which is a slow development out, but that creates a whole bunch of new hats. But at that point, you look for new artists that touch on the things that you love.
Gotcha.
Like I just worked the other night with Judith Hill, and Judith now is a veteran, but still one of the younger singers, and you see what touches you from these people that you play with. Like there's these guys from what's it called? Oh yeah, Scary Pockets.
Okay.
And there's these new cats that just started in a garage, younger dudes, but have an understanding of music. They're in their 30s, and I just played with them. And the website is, they have a podcast like you. It's called Dead Wax.
Okay.
So, but these cats are offering a whole new thing. So what you do is you just absorb it. You know, you don't want to try to be young and hip. You just want to bring, like, you know, when I did the Daft Punk record, they brought, you know, myself, Paul Jackson, and Nathan East into this weird technology,
Yeah.
and it worked.
Really.
And so it's like you keep your game there. You keep your game and then try to contribute to what's new and try to decipher, is it good? Or is it going to be good, or does it make you feel good?
Yeah, I agree. And have you noticed any like interesting genres that have been popping up? Because I think of something like maybe like a G funk, where it was like Snoop Dogg did gangster rap with funk. Or
Yeah.
when you think about all those kind of blends that work, like I don't know, punk and rap. Like I don't know, I'm just thinking of these different combos, like or what Kendrick Lamar did with maybe even jazz on To Pimp a Butterfly. How do you kind of think about that and contributing to genre bending type of music?
Well, Quincy first started that, I think. I mean, he didn't start it. He kind of took the ball
Yeah.
when we did Back in the Block and the Juke Joint, and tried to, you know, he one thing he didn't like about rap was where's the melody.
Hmm.
So Quincy always tried to, put a melody within these new songs. So that's again my thing. If it can have a melodic sense, I mean, I'll give you an opposite of that. You know, the band Take Six.
Okay. Yep.
They're amazing. I've known these guys from the beginning. I've known Mervyn Warren, and I did Brian McKnight's first solo record, and you know, neither of them are with the band anymore. I just did 3 weeks ago here at this studio a Hoagie Carmichael tune called Stardust, and I got the files, and I got called, and they want to go, can you play drums on this? I go, okay, well, you know, send me the files. I'm sure there's bass and piano or what. There was nothing. It
Wow.
was just harmonized vocals. So I did my concept, and I did it all and sent it back, and they freaked out. And I don't know if there's going to be musicians' parts on there, but
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. What I put on there with just the vocals is really hip shit.
Right.
So maybe that starts a whole new trend again.
Yeah, I love that. And just for people that are trying to conceptualize, like, you know, because you've been around so many great hits and all this, like when it comes to melody, like how do you think about melody? What do you think is like the groove in that sense?
Um, we had done years during the session heydays, you know, let's say Japanese sessions, and we would come in and there would be no melody.
Mm.
And it would just be they'd come in and go, okay, you guys just play. And I could see, you know, the guitar players and the keyboard players struggling because they don't know what the hell they're going to play. And then there's like what they started playing basically would have them rip off and write a melody off with these cats, man. So I think the whole key is what is melody. And, you know, when you see a little 5-year-old girl skipping down the street, I don't know if you see that today, but if she's, you know, whistling or humming, ba, 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 boom, there's your melody. Okay, so, you know, it's something that's hypnotic that anybody from 3 to 93 can sing. So melody is the most important facet of music.
Yeah, I just think about even like when you're talking about Daft Punk and just like that whole album with like Pharrell was amazing on that. You think about like Lose Yourself to Dance and
Yes.
yep, and some of those just songs that just have such groove that the moment they come on, or even like you said, Rock With You, like the drum, as soon as it comes in, you're in the song. Like, can you talk about that? Like how, like when artists think, when they think about like, all right, it's 3 seconds in, we're in the music. Like you bring us into that moment too, like getting us into the song.
Well, in the old days with Higher Love, you know, after I'd cut it in New York by myself, I was sitting around by myself on the drums while these guys were doing whatever they were doing. And I started playing that, you know, kind of timbali riff thing. And I was just dicking around.
Mm.
And little did I know, and Tom Lord Alge and Steve Winwood go, JR, do that, do that. I go, what are you talking about? Yeah, what you're playing there? Let's get a track and you do that. And little did I know that after editing, and I played it from top to bottom, they took part from the end and put it to the front, which led into the song and it set up the song. So I had already kind of set the bar high for 16 seconds before Steve said, "Think about it." But one thing you have to understand what the song is, what the intentions of the song are. I mean, I worked a lot for Michael Oldfield,
Yeah.
who wrote Tubular Bells, which was a satanic theme from the 70s. And I'm like, but it was basically of this really hip composed music. And I started doing stuff for him. I did not know what he really wanted. So I kind of helped write with him about that. So I guess it depends. That's the melodies that kids aren't going to be skipping down the street singing.
Exactly. No, I just think like Barry Gordy used to always talk about it from Motown. He's like, we gotta get into the song quick. Like, so
Yeah,
I
well,
keep
he was a
things jumping.
genius.
Yeah. I want to get into a little bit of your writing, but also last question on kind of the music. How do you keep yourself coachable? And
Yeah.
not getting so egotistical. 'Cause I'm sure like artists in general just have huge egos. How do you keep it, where you need to, but also, kind of like that healthy, I guess, healthy ego.
Yeah, you need to surround your brain with positive energy because we all know that there's so much negativity every day. But it is a yin yang thing. When I was going through my first divorce in the early 90s, I was on a session. I was quite impatient and stressed, and it's obviously monetarily triggered stress, and everybody's got it. And I kind of went in there and pulled a Jeff Porcaro a little bit. I go, man, that take's fine, man. Just overdub on that take. And well, the great legend Dean Parks took me aside and he said, JR, just show a little bit of humility and listen, we don't all have our parts, and we know you do, and just be nice. I know you're going through some stuff, and those words were just worth their weight in gold, and I'll never forget them. And of course, my Bob Seger days when they wanted me to do 25 takes a song, I was pissed.
Yeah.
But if something's not right, or if you just because you may have gotten your part doesn't mean everybody else has gotten theirs, and it blends with even what you're going to play.
Yeah.
So once you finally start listening, so I guess patience and maybe your parents weren't that wrong.
Yeah. Actually, I do have one more question on the music. When it comes to like that fresh ear, when you kind of, so you might hear it one day and you're like, all right. Or even for your example, you talked about sometimes you'd ask people just to take the drums out so you can hear it with the fresh ear. Can you talk about that, the importance of that from a music blend?
Yeah, in today's times, everybody's got a perfect demo that they've done, and so we get a chance to listen to the interpretation of the writer and the arranger producer. But you need to have common sense when it comes to why are you there,
Yep.
and I used to call myself the doctor a lot because I would have to come in and rescue crap that was awful. And I'm going, and I'm thinking, all right, I don't say anything, but all right, this has got to go. This I have to fix. This I kind of liked what was on the demo, or this was that, and so I kind of rewrite the part. And so I don't know if I answer your question, but it's kind of like y we have to be arrangers, producers,
Yeah.
and artists all the time on these records.
No, that makes sense. Let's get into your writing. What was the writing process like? And then what's like a perfect writing day look like for you?
Well, my gal Allison Mang, who is my book producer, and she's written six best-selling books herself, started me on a process by asking, John, have you ever done a book? Would you like to do a book? You should do a book. I go, well, the answers were all no, 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 yes. And I thought about, God, I'd love to do a book, but my English classes in high school, I probably just skated through those things, and I was too busy, playing basketball, running track, and drumming, and all that stuff. So The process started by Allie has this unbelievable process, who is, by the way, my partner in Fourth Quarter Press, which releases May 17th.
Oh, cool.
The process was she had a series of 100 words, and on this paper you circle the best 20 or 30 words,
Okay.
and then then you said, and then you come up with an essay using those words only, and write this about your like a biographical essay about yourself only using those words. I go, oh shit, this is already getting hard. And I did that, and then all right, so there's our starting point. Then she goes, go to Kinko's and get a whole bunch of Post-its and a whole bunch of markers. And so this room I'm in, it's my control room, was filled with Post-its. And like start doing your ideas like good as gold, or Superdome, or I just started all these things that were in my brain. Downbeat, blah blah blah, parents, swing, mother, Gene Krupa, blah. So this whole thing was filled, and then Allie, her whole room was filled, and so then we would have all these powwows, and then it became just a filtering process. So this book took 2 years.
Yeah.
To get to this point, and now the process though is incredible, because you find out a lot about yourself. You find out that, man, I'm not that good at the English language. Their words, because I've been playing drums 62 years, so maybe I've got backbeatitis a bit, but there are words that I don't know what they are. And so I would have to research, and I go, oh, no, maybe I remember that word, or is that word too complicated? So, right now I'm doing the orator. I'm reading my book.
That's awesome.
For an audio book. Man, it is hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And
Yeah.
I'm almost halfway through, not quite. And then I'll go back and edit myself and then submit. But this whole process has taken us to this point. Then our ebook will come out May 17th, also through my publishing company.
Awesome.
And the ebook will have a new cover and a new back cover, and it's even going to be so much better than this. That's transpired.
I love to hear. Can you talk a little bit about your publishing company? Like, why'd you started, and I guess like some of the ideas or what you guys have for it.
Yeah, and of course I've got a music publishing company, but
That's right.
that's a whole nother world. So me now getting into this writing thing, I know a whole bunch of people, not just musicians, who I've started memoirs or are thinking about starting memoirs. So Fourth Quarter Press Publishing, we started that because of fourth quarter press basketball,
Yep.
but I'm in my fourth quarter. So there's a lot of people that have gotten seasoned, and you don't have to be older to do this. So what this is going to do is allow people that maybe haven't had the thought of completing this process, to get their memoirs out
I
and to
love
get their
that.
concepts out, and that's going to it's a very interesting, again, the word entrepreneur, as I'm moving up into this other thing that I've kind of learned from my mentor Quincy. Quincy had Vibe magazine, and he had all this really hip stuff going on in this world leadership role, and I think that's really kind of part of why we're doing this.
No, I love that. Yeah, I guess when you're talking, it kind of also made me think on the entrepreneurship side when it comes to music and publishing, like how do artists make sure that they get their writers credits and all those things? Because I think, or performance credits. I know the grand scheme of things, BMI, ASCAP, and all that. But
Right.
like, how do you make sure when you're in those sessions that you're getting your credits that you deserve?
Well, if you're a hired gun, you're not going to get
Mhm.
writers. And 98% of the time you will not get writers. But if you are sitting around on a session and contributing, then what you do is then you have an actual powwow with everybody in that room, and they go, "Hey, man, feel I contributed to this part. I think that there should be splits," and then you start to hash it out, and then not just affiliating with ASCAP or BMI or CSAC. But what then, if that's indeed the case, you find out the peripherals and literally go to the Library of Congress, fill out the form, and copyright it because it's not worth shit unless you copyright it.
Oh, sounds good. Okay, where do were there any stories that you didn't put in the book that you wanted to put in? I guess you said
Ah,
ebook. You're doing an ebook, so maybe there some of them will drop in there.
I tried to keep it with my parents' thoughts, my late parents in mind, about no locker room talk,
Good.
no dirt. Even though there's a few stories of dirt in there, but they're not that nasty or unexpected. I have a whole book of dirt, but they always said, once you release that dirt, you'll never work again, which could or could not be true. But I think, I mean, golly, I have tons of Michael stories. When I first met Mike, and he was so shy and so young and handsome, and they would set up these like girls would come into the studio and they'd sit in these little folding chairs, and he would be so shy, and they would ask him questions and he would answer them back, and they would goodbye, and like I don't know, people want to hear that. People want to hear a little bit more dirt. Like we're playing the Rose Bowl and Michael with the Quincy Jones sold out, and Michael was our guest star, and he was so crazy. He was climbing up the scaffolding of the speakers in front of 80,000 people. I go, man, you're fucking nuts, dude. You're gonna fall. And he didn't give a shit. And I got a million Michael stories of in my first house where he was professing with what was the religion he was with? Jehovah's.
Joe, okay.
And I would come home from a session, not from him, and I would see him driving around in his Rolls Royce, trying to knock on people's doors in my neighborhood. And I'm going, shit, I ain't answering the door. I didn't. So, but I don't think people want to hear about that stuff. And, like Steve Winwood, when we did a second record in Toronto, I come in from LA and where are the boys? They go, well, he's down at this brewery. I go, okay, cool. We got a day off or so. So I go in and where's Steve? He goes, well, he's downstairs. I go, why? What's downstairs? That's where all the vats are and
Wow.
those big things. And I come downstairs and he's standing on top of the vat with a hose connector or something to the release valve, spraying everybody like me with beer. And I'm going, damn, he was a little bit shit faced at that point. So, it was just like little stories like that. I can tell you Barbara Streisand stories, but I don't know if our NDA has expired.
Sounds good. We'll maybe keep that for the next time.
Yeah, there'll be good ones.
Let me ask you this, because one of the things I really enjoyed about your book too was like how you like did like the top tens and some of the stuff that kind of was maybe not didn't fit the chapter but just was interesting things. What made
Okay.
you go into doing that as a part of your book?
Well, my producer Allie has a brain, and what we wanted to do is these are things that I've stated and stuff, and we would both document these ideas and things, and I mean, like the songs that I thought were the top 10 coolest songs. There's 100 of those. I mean, I could have gone crazy, but we decided to keep it in a format where it's still intriguing, about, like top tens. When we got into the JR 70 checkpoint list, that could have easily been 200
Yeah.
or 10. And I thought of that going, there's not a lot of drummer, stuff in this book, but even though it's for everyone, but there's drummer information. Every time I sit on the drum set live, well, and then in the studio, I go through all these things in my brain. And I would assume other drummers can relate to that. I, however, have really fine-tuned it. So I just felt that it was each one of these little things offers entertainment value.
Love to hear it. All right, we're gonna do a quick rapid fire and then end with my final question. Who is an artist during your time that you didn't get a chance to work with, but you would love to work with?
McCartney.
Awesome. What is an artist from the past that was deceased before your time that you would have loved to work with?
Ooh, golly. God, there was a bunch of them. Um, I mean, I knew Miles.
Okay.
I got to meet Miles, but I would have probably loved to have worked with Miles. Oh God, there's a bunch. Of course, probably George Harrison would have been
Oh, yeah.
one. Um, golly. I mean, anybody in that mainstream bebop world, I think there would have been a point in my life where I would have been ready, full, which I was. And I kind of converted my vibe. And I'm very fortunate enough to have worked with Herbie. So basically, I got to touch a little bit on that world. As far as like, oh gosh, I mean, there's like tons of rock stuff. There's ways. I know I'm missing one that I always want to talk about, but maybe I'll come back to it in a second.
Sounds good. What is a TV or movie or soundtrack that you would either want to produce or wish you got a chance to work on?
Jeez, I never got to work on any Star Trek.
Ooh,
I'm a Trekkie. I'm an original Trekkie. I never got to work with John Williams on some of those monumental films, like Indiana Jones and stuff. I think that would have been great. I did fortunately get to work with Hans Zimmer many times.
cool.
With Superman, Batman with Superman, the Johnny Depp stuff, which I'm actually putting together a little mini doc on the second film, Dead Man's Chest, and um, let's see here. Golly, I always wanted to play with Andy Griffith.
Wow. Okay.
And Lee Sklar, one of my just great buddies, he's in the book quite extensively. Got to work with Andy in the last days of doing a solo record, and I was almost called, and then I was on hold for a Bob Dylan thing, and I never got to work with Bob, but that it almost happened. And a lot of people don't know that I was on hold for Paul Simon's One Trick Pony tour.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was on hold, and we'll just leave it at that.
I love it. And I love Graceland too. Speaking of albums, what are three perfect albums that we should listen to this weekend?
The Dude, Quincy Jones,
Yeah.
absolutely perfect record. Gives something for everyone. I mean, might as well just toot my own horn. Rufus and Shaka Khan stomping at the Savoy, all four sides, and Off the Wall, Michael Jackson. I'll give you a fourth one. It's Steve Winwood's Back in the High Life again.
Oh yeah, great. Okay. All right, sounds good. We'll make sure to put all these songs down there.
Oh yeah.
We should end it with this. How we always end it is what should be in, I'll switch it up and say what should be in a drummer's toolkit.
Ah, patience. Um, the tools of the trade, drum keys, extra drum heads, um, promptness, um, um, the ability to morph into any situation. Leave your ego at the door. These are like little things that should be in this toolkit. Your correct sticks, maybe an alternative stick. As a drummer, sometimes your beads get worn down. Save those because those have a completely different cymbal sound.
Wow.
Brushes. I have my own innovative line of sticks, plastic big brushes for different kinds of things, and jazz brushes. Cymbal mallets. I use marimba mallets for cymbal mallets, so that's really good. Extra drum keys. Foot pedal springs.
Yeah.
Um, Gosh, I don't know. Sometimes Vaseline to put on your lugs, and towel. Um, I think just logical things that a drummer does. But I always insist that a drummer should use his common sense and be there at least 30 minutes earlier before any situation.
I love to hear it. All right, John, thank you again so much for writing this book, King of the Groove. Make sure you go grab it. Is there anything else you want us to support or anything else coming up in your world that I can let our viewers check out?
Yeah, we've got a new YouTube channel. There's like four of them, but we've now gone into a brand new one. I think it's John J. Robinson. Of course, kingofthegroove.com, johnjrobinson.com has all the listings. You can get an autograph book there. You can buy swag. I'm not really in the market of selling the stuff. I mean, but it's there to buy if you want to buy it. My publishing company launches May 17th with the ebook, King of the Groove. And at that same time, I'm receiving a doctorate from Iowa State University that same day. So we'll be doing that. Also, look for the J.R. Robinson Experience coming to a small place near you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, JR. It was a true pleasure in talking to you.
Thanks, brother. All right, book 'em.
Yep, take care. Thank you.